When it comes to web app and API security, the choice is simple. You can choose Fastly's security solution that teams will actually use in full blocking mode, just like 90% of their customers. Or you can stick with costly options that you probably just turn off. You can get Fastly's all-in-one platform that protects apps everywhere they live, however they're built. Or departments can agree to disagree. You can go to securityweekly.com/Fastly to learn more. Or you can just wish you had. Cybercriminals are using social engineering loaded with urgency and fear to successfully prey on victims, your employees, or your customers. Protect your Office 365 email from today's most sophisticated attacks with Barracuda Email Threat Scanner. It's a free tool to help protect your business from these hard-to-detect attacks. The Barracuda Email Threat Scanner uses artificial intelligence to hunt and eliminate Office 365 email threats. Find the cybersecurity threats hiding in your Office 365 email right now. Get your free email threat scan at securityweekly.com/Barracuda.
And welcome back to Adrian Security Weekly. Paul is on break, and I have co-opted the show, and I'm renaming it. He can rename it next time. Episode 200, it'll be back. It's fine.
I, for one, welcome our new Adrian Overlords.
Join us June 24th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time to learn how web application firewalls can help mitigate exposure in a complex threat landscape. Then join us July 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We like that time and that day. That's usually a Thursday, to learn how a thoughtful approach to SASE, one of my favorite acronyms in the business, can improve security and enable scalability. Visit securityweekly.com/webcast to register now. If you missed any of our previously recorded webcasts or technical trainings, they are available for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/on-demand. And now, on to the news.
Now, Adrian, you like that term because you are sassy?
There's so many uses for it. So much you can do with that term.
So I have to ask, what does SASE stand for?
Self-addressed stamped envelope.
That's what I was going to say.
You know you're old when?
Yes, when you know what that means. Even after we told you, if you know what that means.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell you all day like the technologies that make it up, but I had to Google it. It's Secure Access Service Edge. It's one of those Gartner terms.
Oh, that's why I don't know what it is. Gartner's dead to me.
When Gartner comes up, you got to use it, you know. So I worked for a company that competed with Gartner, and I tried coming up with my own terms, and it just did not work out. You know, you end up in every conversation having to explain your term. And
that's just because all your acronyms spell dirty words in Persian.
Well, so funny story. The one I came up with was I had my own acronym for CASB. I called it Cloud Application Control. And then all my British friends laughed at me because CAC means poop in British.
Yeah. That's what I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's no different than when I was been teaching the wireless class for a long time when we talked about rooting Android devices. And all the Brits laugh because root means something completely different.
Yes, it does.
Right.
Yep.
Speaking of rooting things, let's get into the news here. Larry almost always has something about rooting in his stories.
No, that's usually Paul, but the British version of rooting.
Oh man, where do we start? Why don't we start with the ransomware and just get that out of the way? Because
there was a lot of ransomware stuff in here.
A lot every week anymore.
I mean, yeah.
I just don't even bother. It's like I just don't even bother putting it on the news anymore because it's like, oh yeah, there's like 37 ransomware attacks yesterday.
I mean,
it's old, it's not news.
I mean, if we think about what some of the evolution over the years, like for so long we railed on PHP because for like every day there was some new PHP thing, and then it was WordPress.
Yep.
And then it was something else, and now it's ransomware. Like every week is ransomware, or some derivative of a ransomware story. So
it works.
It does.
It gets the bad guys paid. So, ransomers are going to ransom, and they're ransoming, and they hit Teamsters in 2019. Apparently, we're just finding out about it, but they refused to pay.
So that means they had good backups?
No, it means there's a bunch of ransomware guys buried in the end zone of some stadium somewhere.
The Jimmy Hoffa?
Yeah, on top of Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is a trend where ransomware folks are really bad at picking targets.
Yeah.
Like what is up with them picking targets that are just going to cause them pain?
It's just, it's like a ransomware artist hits Revel.
They're not targeting
the mafia.
I don't think they're targeting. They just find some place where it works.
Well, they hit the nuclear industry. They hit that Saul Orion's contractor, and I did that story the other day, and we were talking about that. And that's another one, like you said, that's just like bring the pain. Like, I'm not going to go hit a grocery store chain. I'm going to hit a nuclear weapons contractor because no chance they're going to get agitated about that. And Hellfire missiles are getting warmed up on the launch pad and whatever.
Let's see. What do Americans like? Let's see. Meat, cars that use a lot of gasoline,
guns,
and weapons
of all sorts. Yeah, the bigger the better.
Just piss them off as much as we can.
Yeah.
And alcohol.
Well, yeah, they didn't get any alcohol people this week, but they did get our meat.
Yet.
They rooted our meat.
It's not terribly hard to find brewing systems and all kinds of water control systems.
If they take out the Budweiser factory, it's going to be bad.
Especially considering if we get to 70% immunization by the 4th of July, Budweiser says free beer for everyone.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't hear this. I know Krispy Kreme did a free donut with vaccination.
Yeah, no, the nation has to get to 70%, and Budweiser said that they'd give free beer to everyone.
Cool.
I think Budweiser might be onto something.
Yeah.
Beer and donut diet. Yeah,
but one, that was probably a pretty safe bet because are we going to get to 70%? And 2, it's Budweiser.
Yeah, they probably researched that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like here local to us, Doug, with what is it, Cardi's Furniture?
Yeah.
If you go buy furniture now, and you can get it interest free for the summer. But if you're buying it on the special program, if the Red Sox pitch a no-hitter this year, you get the furniture for free.
Okay, I'd say that's not very likely.
Exactly.
That's a pretty good bet, yeah.
Exactly. So come buy our furniture and
now
spend lots of money.
Now that they banned illegal substances for pitchers, it's like, oh yeah, great time to offer that one, guys.
Yep. But
anyway, Revel went after this nuclear contractor, and it was almost a supply chain attack. So they were actually going after the subcontractors that were supporting these weapons systems. So it's kind of an interesting embedded attack, and even though it was ransomware, it's still a pretty scary kind of idea. And as I've been saying all along, ransomware is not always ransomware. Sometimes ransomware is ransomware, and sometimes ransomware is just to disguise what you were really doing. And Revel is a malware as a service provider, so they don't just do their own thing. They farm this stuff out to other people.
Yeah, so they could have been hired to do that, and it could be a distraction, you're saying.
Well, the ransomware part may be a distraction because you don't want anybody to do forensics on it, so you just ransomware the whole place, and then nobody.
And that was sort of one of the things that we sort of thought about or prophesized about after OPM was like all of a sudden you've got all these mercenaries that are in all these networks trying to get all this data, and OPM, and now the data requirement has been met, but we've got all these networks.
Exactly.
We're in all these networks. What do we do with them now?
Right.
Burn them to the ground.
Monetize them. Yeah, monetize them.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've heard about. A lot of what they do is they'll go out and they'll do the opportunistic stuff, and they just got a list of stuff that they got shells on, and then just research those, figure out what they got, and try and decide. Some other podcast I was on, I forget where it was, but somebody described it as the ransomware sales funnel. Like they're using marketing terms to decide like how they go through their qualified leads and decide.
They've got help desks, they've got sales teams, they got the whole thing. They've got hiring practice. There was another. I didn't put this story on there, but there was a story this week about how to get hired. Some. There was like
Krebs put that in. I think
it was a Krebs story, but it was like that same kind of thing, like about this woman and how she got hired by the ransomware or the ransomware service people to be a programmer, and just how it was just like turning into a normal industry almost.
And I think you did put it in, but there was a story in there that you had that maybe got put in a little odd. It's your number 6. It just says Krebs on security in depth, which goes to his page.
Yeah.
And the second article is, how does one get hired by top cybercrime guy?
That is it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why that was like that. Yeah. So is that woman from Latvia
There's a 55-year-old Latvian woman who was working as a programmer for TrickBot. I guess you put that on your resume later, like, oh yeah, I worked for TrickBot for 2 years, responsible for the version 3 rollout.
Project manager for that.
There you go.
So it looks like Ukrainian police nabbed some ransomware folks.
Clop.
So they're doing their part. I hadn't heard of Clop. Has anybody else heard of Clop?
I
mean, I've heard of the clap, but not the clop.
I honestly
Where's
haven't heard of that
soundboard?
one either. I didn't know that particular one, but it says it's been around since 2019. And so I'm guessing they're just another ransomware gang and located in the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like their three big targets that they got were...
Kroger's.
Well, Stanford University Medical, University of California, University of Medical, and Kroger's.
Right.
Yeah, I
not
think it's
to
easy to forget
mix-
how many companies are getting hit. Like it doesn't even, some of these don't even make the news anymore.
Yeah. It's
kind of like the old days with credit card breaches. You only heard about the big ones, not the thousand
or data
small
breaches. You know, I remember the first time I saw that like OPM data breach, everybody talked about it for a week. Now it's like, wow, if they didn't get more than 100 million records, and maybe not even then, we didn't bother to mention it. It's like below the here's a dated term for you, below the fold.
Yeah.
That's a dated term right there.
It's not
Newspaper term.
newsworthy.
Yeah.
I guess it's below the scroll now. So
Yeah, yeah.
I was looking through one of the other articles, and it said that you said they arrested a few people. This other article says they arrested 800 people.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah,
across 12 countries.
Yeah, that was a different thing. And that was so that was, if I recall, basically they made so when Silk Road disappeared, there was a vacuum. There was a need for black market folks to be able to sell to each other and talk to each other and stuff like that. So I forget if it was CIA, FBI, U.S. government. I think it was a collaboration between several governments. I think Australian government was kind of key in this. They basically found this company, took over the app, and from like day one, it was a government controlled app, and they just turned it into like the most popular, like a replacement for Silk Road.
They just pitched it as a secure social media platform like Signal or something, and told all those told everybody, hey, here's a way for you to communicate, and everybody jumped on board just like they would on Discord or anything else. But they actually could read all the messages, so they were actually collecting information because it was this traditional police work. I mean, that's like standard and kind of police work applied.
Like they ran this for how many years?
Years, because they were collecting intel, and they don't give up that they're getting all that intel. And I mean, that's how they run child porn operations, all kinds of stuff. Is they set up sites and they attract people to them, and they don't reveal it any sooner than they have to, because then it's no good anymore.
Yeah, I mean that was a huge one.
It could be like in World War II, they had cracked that purple code, and they'd cracked Enigma code as well, and so they always had to have two sources for the information, because otherwise the people would know their codes had been broken. So they would always make sure they had a way to trace it back to some other source, so that it wasn't obvious that the codes had been cracked, and then they would have to make decisions about which things to take advantage of. So they would give up the code, because then they would change all the codes and they'd be stuck.
Kind of, sort of. In the case of Purple, the most famous how do we use this information that I'm aware of was when they went after General Yamamoto, who was the architect for the Pearl Harbor attack. And it wasn't a second source. Well, I guess you could construe it as a second source of information. They knew the area where he was going to be. Because of cracking the code, they sent a reconnaissance plane out that just happened to
spot him.
See
look, there he is, right there.
Spot it, and then they called in an airstrike.
Yeah, like over there.
So I take it back. That is I don't think of it as a second source of information, but
it's plausible. It's plausible that look, this just random thing happened. Yeah. And
in the case of the Enigma machine, what impresses me the most, and I tell this story frequently, is that when I started working at NSA in the mid 80s, the fact that the Enigma machine had been broken was still a secret, because there were certain other countries that were still using it, and it was broken in the late 30s. So for a good 50 years they were able to successfully keep the fact that we had broken that form of communication a secret.
I mean, is it just me, or is law enforcement getting pretty good at the cybers now?
They're getting we
a lot better. Like that they recovered the Bitcoin from the Colonial Pipeline payment. Like there's we've heard a lot of stories about good collaboration between
maybe the bad
guys.
Maybe the bad guys suck at security as much as the good guys do.
Well, they do, but also law enforcement's really spent a lot of time, because I remember talking to law enforcement groups back in the 90s, and they would have something like, this guy's our like high-tech officer, who was some guy that just happened to have a PC sitting on his desk. And I remember the first time I met one of those people, I was like, so you're the high-tech crimes guy, cool. And he's like, well, all it was I got stuck with the computer. Nobody else wanted it, and then like that I was designated. But now they really spent time. They've trained people. They spent, you saw that sort of transition. They started sending people to SANS. They started people sending. I remember when my classes, like suddenly they were full of police officers, and at intense school we would have all these police officers in a class, and I was like, wow, this is new and different. I was at Secret Service people and FBI people, and it was kind of like we were talking about earlier. Sending people to these things got them more aware of it. It made them see the culture. And they just never conceptualized a lot of this stuff. It was the most foreign thing imaginable to them. And today, if you go over there, it's far more impressive than it was even just a few years ago. And a lot, everybody's having to ramp up on this stuff because their constituents are calling in and saying, I just lost all my money. What do I do? And the answer may be, well, you say, wow, I lost all my money. It's time to start over. But at least the person knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, so curious to hear y'all's reaction to the ransomware poll that 80% of victims don't pay up, because that's kind of the opposite of what I feel like I've been hearing for a while.
Now, there may be some skew on that data, because if you think about of the percentage of folks that get ransomware, how many of those are like my grandma?
Yeah,
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an online media company that did it. I don't know what the sample size was, but I can't imagine it was huge.
And how many paid and then said, hell no, we didn't pay?
Right. Yeah, you got to be careful. Okay, 120 respondents. So and you got to be careful how you ask the questions and that kind of thing. Like it's
well, there was a couple of stories today about how companies are starting to get a lot of pushback from their insurers that are not wanting to pay these ransoms. And so that's scaring them, because I think for a while, a lot of people had cyber policies and it was just like, we'll pay these ransoms. And so they're like, it's cheaper for us to pay the ransom, and it may still be cheaper to pay the ransom than to go out and do a full restore. And literally, burn everything to the bare metal and do a full restore of everything. Even if you have the capability to do that, it may be cheaper to just say, that's going to cost $50 million and this is going to cost $49. So we're going to go with the cheaper solution and just pay the ransom and get the keys back, and then we'll be back in business in 35 minutes. And we'll call the FBI later, and maybe they'll go hack these guys to get the keys, get the Bitcoins back, or not. I'll be on my yacht. Right. Either way,
Yeah, so that's another big one. Hearing about all kinds of insurance companies getting out of the cyber insurance business, making it more difficult to file a claim. We hear stuff like, you can't get that reimbursed because that company isn't on the pre-approved IR team list.
Yeah, and I think insurers jumped into this field early because it seemed like an opportunity. They didn't truly understand it, but they did cap all those policies. So, if you have a cyber policy, read it carefully and see what what the limits are on it. But they capped a lot of it because they didn't really understand it. Now they're seeing it's a huge risk. It's just this huge risk problem, and they don't really have a real good handle on it yet, I think, to understand, what do we charge for premiums, because we don't really understand what the potential loss is. Whereas you say, if a warehouse burns down, I know what the cost is, but I don't know what the cost of this is. If they get ransomware, it could be anything from $500 to $500 million. So we don't know. It could be anything. It depends on who ransomwared you and how much they know.
Well, they've got some numbers now, and the article says we've personally seen some policies go up 40 to 60% in just the past year.
That sounds light.
Yeah.
You want me to insure you to cover an almost infinite loss potential, and yet you want to pay almost nothing? Yeah, right. That's not how insurance works, folks.
But the numbers that aren't in here is that, they were going from paying out, pretty much everything a couple of years ago to, I don't know what the numbers are, but they're not paying all the they're not paying out for everything these days.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the insurance companies were opportunistic, and they took advantage of people's naivete. So, in some sense, they're getting what's coming to them, perhaps. Yeah, karma. That's it.
But it is.
Can you insure karma?
Well, it is a huge problem, I think, because the dollar risk of all this cyber exploit stuff is so far reaching. And as they've seen this evolve, and now the ransomware people are not just doing ransomware, they're doing double ransomware, which is the term that they're using to describe they're going to leak your documents if you don't pay, to triple ransomware, which is where they're going to not only leak the documents, they go after your customers, and they say, we have your information, we're going to release it to hackers if you don't pay us too. And so the potential loss there is really, really high, and it's hard to measure, because you start going to these companies, they don't want to tell you anything, they don't want to tell you how they operate, they don't want you doing this, and there's, it's tough. But I think insurance companies will eventually get round to doing this just like they do everything else, and they'll audit you, or they'll have enough actuarial data to actually decide they know how to measure this in loss potential with an actuarial statistics.
I mean, I agree. I think they'll get there, and it has to do with what they're going to cover and what they're going to not cover, and the limits and actuarial tables and so on and so forth. But they fundamentally, I think they were preying on people's belief or wish or angst. Brian alluded to it in the first segment. He said something about, well, people have this idea that security is somebody else's problems, and I've seen it from my clients where they especially early on in the beginnings of the cyber insurance craze, if we can call it that, they thought, well, heck, why should I have to pay for compliance and do all this stuff? I'll just get an insurance coverage and we'll be done. We don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
So maybe it comes down to, no, there are no, free lunches. There's no easy button. Security is something you can't get away from. You got to figure out how to do it and make it work in your environment.
Yeah. It's a tough one. And I mean, selling this stuff, I mean, I've looked at policies for people before, and and I was like, you realize this is going to cover only like a small portion of what you could possibly lose. And they're like, oh no, I think we got it. I think this is going to mitigate all our risk. That and a set of tape backups from 22 years ago.
Yes.
We'll be back up in no time.
So moving on from ransomware, one that tickled me was hackers using Slack to break into EA games. And I think this could happen to most large companies that are very Slack dependent. But what tickled me is, like they stole a bunch of data, like source code. Like does anybody actually want the source code for FIFA 2021? I imagine them stealing all this source code and like trying to sell it to someone and just finding out that nobody wants EA's source code.
Weren't they selling it for like $200 million though? They had like a huge price tag on the source code. I
mean, I feel like the value isn't, this whole idea of source code being something, incredibly, sensitive secret data, when it's software that everybody can go out and get their hands on, they can reverse engineer it. I'm not sure what people are going to do with the source code, because the value in it is, the whole team that keeps it up to date. Having a snapshot of source code,
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that? How are
I
you going to
didn't get
monetize
it. I
that?
was like, what are you going to do? Like, use it and release your own game? That's just called, like, Doug's FIFA 2021.
How would you get? I mean, the lawyers would immediately just,
Well, I guess it could be
obliterate
released like in China or something. So there'd be like a Chinese bootleg version of the game. But I mean, is that worth $200 million? I can't imagine, because, like you said, they could just reverse engineer it and make a really bad knockoff of it or something.
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting, though.
It's worth pointing out that it wasn't anything to do with Slack. Perhaps it sounded more like just a social engineering. Other than how did the person, the bad guys,
Slack was the method.
Get onto the Slack channel?
Yeah,
it was nothing about Slack in and of itself.
Yeah. No, Slack was the it was the road that they were on. But yeah, it wasn't like it wasn't a Slack 0 day or anything like that. Yeah, it was mostly social engineering, I think.
And like you said, I'm not sure exactly what you do with something like that. I mean, I would think it would take a long time just to get up to speed on the code, even if you wanted to do something with it, because it's not like that's like a simple set of code. I'd love to look at it, but it's not like it's like 100 lines of Python or something. It's God knows how. It was 700. I think it was 700 megabytes or something of code.
780 gigs.
Gigabytes. That's right. It was 780 gigs of code. It's going to take a pretty good team just to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, just getting that running, and
then what do you do with it?
And these are AAA games. This isn't like some small indie game or something like that. So yeah, I don't think their plan was very well thought through.
Maybe they should have come up with a way to do code review and offered to sell their security reviews.
There you go, Jeff. There you go. If they were smart, but like I tell my kids, if criminals were smart,
that's right. 7-Eleven would be a lot safer.
Tattoos.
Oh, ouch.
Well, I mean, nobody ever busts into the 7-Eleven with a shotgun and thinks I'm going to be in prison for the rest of my life over $27. So, yeah, like you say.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think it was just opportunistic. I think they were just trolling, and they got lucky, and then they went out there and said, hey, if you want this, you have to pay us some astronomical amount of money. And I find it hard to believe anybody would. There's not really a competitor for that. I mean, it's not like there's like 4 platforms that are all competing for your business. It's like EA Games controls all these online things. I mean, there's other online companies, but like there's not a competitive online football game that's competing with this that they're going to give the code to her. So who's going to pay for it? It doesn't make any sense.
Now, if they were going to steal the rights to things that EA owns and give it to more deserving game companies, I could get behind this. But that's not a thing that you can do.
I think it was just opportunistic. They stole something, and they stole a cash register to 7-Eleven. They didn't realize the Hope Diamond was being stored in the cash register, and then they opened it up and went, "Oh wow, what the hell do we do with this? We just wanted some money for drugs."
Yeah, here's a great story. Darknet Diaries did the series on these Xbox hackers that managed to get into most of the game companies through Microsoft and through Microsoft's connection with the Xbox dev kits and stuff like that. Fascinating story if you've never heard it. And honestly, they're just like hacking enthusiasts, like they're hacking Xboxes and stuff like that. And it was just one of those, like one thing led to another, and look at what I can do. I can get into this, and all of a sudden we're in, Microsoft's network, and to them the draw was, hey, we can see new games that aren't released yet, and we can play beta games and stuff like that. Right. So it was
sort of
incredibly cool,
traditional hacker. That's like the traditional hacker model. I mean, if they'd held on to this code and nobody knew about it, they could have gone through it and found ways to exploit the game, to make money or
build cheats and stuff like that,
or just be annoying as hell. I mean, if you could, because all these one of the things people do in these online games is they get in there and they cause problems or they rig the game, and people take this stuff very seriously. I mean, they're this is all esports stuff. So these people play this for money. There's YouTubers who make money off of it. And if you're the person that's in there causing problems, you could almost ransomware the game and say, I know a way in. I got it out of the source code. They don't know how I'm getting in. And, you want your esports game to come off without a hitch. You're going to send me, a couple of Bitcoins, and I'll make sure it's like the mafia. I'll make sure it'd be a shame if something happened to your esports game this weekend. Wouldn't that be sad?
Yeah, well, I mean, it looks like the games on their own already. Yeah, wasn't there a story about Project? Was it Project Red that made cyber? Help me out here. My brain's sputtering. And they CD Project Red. Thank you. And they get a hold of the code, and the first thing they start do is fix bugs in the game.
Well, yeah.
After they stole it.
I know they should have just bug bountied EA and said, we'll tell you all the problems with your code if you'll just send us some Bitcoins.
Yeah. If you want to buy these patches, we can solve all your problems. We got
patches written for your whole game for your first release because there's going to be full of bugs. You know that.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any favorite stories here they want to dive into?
Let's see.
Well, I was kind of interested in, if I may.
Yes, you may. Sure.
What was the title of the damn thing? I'm in the middle of the article. The required MFA is not sufficient.
Oh, yeah.
Security.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's some shots fired there, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, yes and no. Again, I don't see that there was any weakness in the MFA. It's a broken record. It comes down to poor implementation, poor configuration.
Yeah.
Unless I missed something in the article, but that's what I'm pulling from it in my perusing of the article. Which, it's just like good, strong encryption. It works great until you implement it poorly, which most people do.
Well, and so there were some design problems too, though. There were some, but again, it's not the MFA concept; it was the implementation. And they were able to capture hashes and make fake tokens and all kinds of things. But that's all about the design of the MFA. So if you validate your MFA up front and you make sure you have a good practice and it works right, you shouldn't have these problems. So, I think that it was a little misleading because I first saw that. I was like, what? I was like, come on. Don't tell me that this is not going to work. And then I went and read the article and I was like, okay, well, yeah, if you don't do it right, it's like everything.
Right.
If you point the shotgun the wrong way, things go south fast.
Right. It's like OAuth tokens and, authentication keys and stuff like that. You typically see that, with a lot of systems, because something needs to log in and doesn't have the ability to enter a 6-digit code or, press a thing, if it's a service account or something like that, then, you've got these keys that are essentially like, half factor or zero factor authentic. Like all you need to have is the key itself, and people are stealing those and using those to bypass.
But it's still defense in depth and all this, and this is an article that's basically a security in a vacuum kind of article that basically says if you don't do it right and you have a lousy product, it probably won't work the way you intended. But I'm like, okay, that's why you have defense in depth anyway, but buy better products. Right.
Yeah. The bottom line of this article is be aware of MFA bypasses and prepare for them.
Well, it's also a marketing problem because it's like you have to test products that you're buying. You can't just read the glossy literature that says our product is amazing and AI enabled. It will always work and solve all your problems. Just pay us. And that, of course, that's what they want. Companies want to just write a check and like the insurance thing and say, done. No more need for security. We're out. And that's how they get sold on stuff that's inferior. But you have to test this stuff. You have to have a plan, and you have to understand how it works. You can't just hope that it works, or you'll be in trouble.
So, Larry,
I got one. I was just going to say, hey, I got one.
I wonder if you're going for the same one I was going to ask you to do.
Let me guess. It very much comes into something Doug was talking about earlier about, hey, you got to come in above the fold on how many records you release. CVS accidentally leaks 1 billion website records.
1 billion.
1 billion.
1 billion records.
Yeah, including COVID-19 vaccine searches.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That got people's attention. That got above the fold.
Yeah.
But how long before that's just like, well, yeah, at some point, every record that ever existed is going to have been leaked. So pretty much all my stuff's out there now. I'm like, okay, I got no secrets left. So
now this article was from Forbes, so it was very light on technical details.
They want $6.99 a month to let me read it. So
really?
I don't know. I don't know the details of what was leaked. Yeah, apparently
you go to Forbes too much. I'm on my first of 4 free articles.
Yeah.
What would you like
I
to
don't
know?
think I go to Forbes that often, not on purpose.
Yeah, let's see. It was an unsecured database belonging to healthcare and retail giant CVS, allegedly by a vendor with 1 billion data points. So who knows what exactly
apparently
that
didn't
means.
have a password or anything. It was just like, it was an old school programming problem, where they say we keep trying to access this database and it doesn't work and it doesn't work. And finally you call the database people, go, look, guys, we got to get this code fixed. And they go, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to take the passwords off and let you have live access to it. We'll put those back in later. And then that never quite gets done.
March of this year, a security researcher notifies us of a publicly accessible database that contained non-identifiable CVS health metadata, otherwise known as an open S3 bucket.
Yes. Just download it.
Here
Yeah,
is
Adrian.
fantastic. The bad part about this finding was just how big it was, Fowler told Forbes. The number of records would time out or break my browsing tool when I tried to get a total number of emails. There's so many records they couldn't do the analysis.
Yeah. That's
on how bad it was.
So looking at it, and they reading some more into this, they did say data points for those records, and that much of them were like what you entered into the search terms on CVS Health and CVS.com, including if you were looking for like COVID vaccine sites and that type of stuff. So,
Viagra, all that.
Yeah.
So ostensibly, it would take a little bit of work to tie that search information probably back to maybe an IP address and try to figure out who's behind it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would argue the same.
So again, it seems like this is a stretch of an article.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes and no. But if you think about lots of data that was leaked or put out in the public that was quote de-identified or doesn't have any particular identifying information, it was like 10 years ago that like Netflix released a bunch of viewing data that was anonymous, and turns out a bunch of folks did some analysis and like, oh no, that's this person.
Yeah.
Like, so some of that de-identified data can be re-identified.
Once somebody digs through it and finds there's a key field over there, and they can just do a nice little join, and we'll pull the other database is sitting out there somewhere.
And you start adding this stuff to like, have I been pwned, and all of these other data sources. You start to, it's a massive amount of data, but it's
fair, and it's probably why they refer to it as data points. It's kind of like all the the low and information vulnerabilities from your scan report. You don't really ever do anything with them, but some people do, and it can be quite lucrative.
Yeah.
I was originally going to say, as I was reading through this article, because CVS and its healthcare data, I was going to wonder if it was like Anthem. And the problem with the Anthem breach was not that they were not HIPAA compliant. They did a great job separating privacy information from healthcare information. They just didn't think about protecting the privacy information in and of itself. And that's essentially what happened at Anthem. There's no mention, I don't think, of HIPAA in this article, but that's immediately what springs to my mind.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, Adrian, which story did you think I was going to pick?
The certified pre-owned.
See, I didn't really get it.
ADCA.
Yeah, I didn't get a ton of time to dig into this. But the meme that they announced the article with was like, that was brilliant marketing.
It's worth it for the memes alone. The meme game is excellent.
Yep.
But the TLDR of the article is that, if you're using, what is it called? What is ADCS? It's Active Directory Certificate Services.
Yep.
Basically, you can create certs, attached to identities within AD that will get you access regardless of whether anybody changes their passwords or not. So you can think that you've contained an attack and lock people out and stuff like that. And if you don't realize that they're using a certificate to authenticate, they can just keep accessing stuff.
And that's back to my ransomware disguise the whole thing kind of model of the ransomware is just a bonus. It's like if you've embedded all kinds of stuff in these people's systems over a long period of time, they go do a restore, you're still in there. And, if you think you're about to get caught, you just, ransomware the whole place, and they get, they do a restore, and you're right back where, to where you were whenever the backup was done. So it's definitely a problem.
Yep. So the meme that sold the story for me, like, one, this is going to be an interesting thing to follow, was the meme is the used car salesman, talking to a customer, and the used car salesman as Microsoft slaps the roof of Active Directory certificate services and says, "This bad boy can fit so many misconfigurations in it." Like,
it's a great meme.
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because released by SpectreOps, and they've got a white paper, a defensive toolkit out already, and an offensive toolkit for exploiting will be published at Black Hat.
Yeah, they're presenting it at Black Hat. It's Will Schroeder and Lee Christensen.
Yep.
Are the folks that the researchers that did it, and it looks like it's for defenders out there well worth a dig into.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't even know these components existed in Active Directory, so that this is mostly news for me.
Yep. And sort of by their admission, like, they're releasing this stuff and they're talking about this stuff, but they feel like they're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to. It's a really long article, and it's way down at the bottom that they talk about defending, but and I didn't read it. But what I'm curious about is if I assume that certificate authentication exists for convenience sake for some degree, for speed, for ease of use, and I'm sure its use is prolific. And I'm curious as to what the defenses are that they're recommending and how much it's going to impact what people are used to in terms of their user experience, so to speak.
Missed opportunity for Jump Cloud to sponsor this news segment. Give us a call. Yeah, I mean, that's where my mind goes when I read this kind of thing. It's like, man. And at least once a year this happens where I'm like, man, we got to get off of AD. Man, we got to get off of AD.
But what's the alternative?
Well, yeah, and it's really old. I mean, AD, the framework of AD is quite
Yellow
old.
Pages,
and,
NIS.
Yeah.
And how do you get off
that's
of it?
That's why I mentioned Jump Cloud. There aren't a whole lot out there.
No,
and
I
that's
mean,
kind of how they
it's-
pitch themselves.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're not 100%.
When that
replacement.
how old is Active Directory? I mean, it replaced Novell, so
It goes back to early NT, right?
yeah. I mean, it's been around for a long time, so there's got to be elements in it that are still old. They don't redo the whole thing every time they come out with a new server edition. And so this thing's been around a while. I'm sure there's and it was never designed with the idea
1999.
of it was never designed with the idea of what the world looks like today. It was designed in this sort of Novell, everything is a vacuum, nothing's connected kind of world. And now it's like we got so many things coming into these networks, it's just crazy. And all the time.
And I mean, to replace it, there's it depends on what you're using. If you're using group policy heavily, like that's a huge piece to replace.
Just the training. Can you imagine if you went to your shop with all these people that have been heavily trained on group policy objects and all this stuff and how complex that stuff is, and you went, okay, we're going to switch. We're going to switch over to new Novell. Everybody's going to have to be retrained. There will be pitchforks and torches after that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could do it today. I think, especially if you're going towards zero trust anyway, a lot of that, the work that you do there is going to replace pieces of it.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible today. But
you could secure Windows ME if you really wanted to, but it's just how much money have you got?
Does
Well, I mean,
a properly configured multi-factor authentication solution defeat this Active Directory certificate?
Those
trust?
don't work, Jeff. There's an article that says that
Oh,
doesn't
damn it! We're screwed. I'm
are
gonna just
screwed.
I'm gonna disconnect now.
We're going to have to use
It's been
DNA.
nice knowing
That's
you
the only
guys.
choice.
Well, listeners, if you know anybody that has successfully replaced it, that would be an interesting guest segment, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
What are the options?
I would like to hear that story.
Yeah.
Home rolled LDAP.
And Jeff, you it was funny you brought up NIS and Yellow Pages. The first time I ever got to administer and was responsible for a Windows domain, it was actually NIS and YP tied to Samba.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God!
I forgot Samba.
Talk about a dated reference.
Talk about pain.
Samba.
Pain. Yeah.
Well,
Everybody
but
loves
I
Samba.
mean, if you move to this model where, I've worked for several companies now where there's no LAN there's no local network, there's no local resources, so there's really, you never run into any need for AD. You know, it's mostly SaaS stuff, and your Okta, something like that becomes your, that replacement for AD, and there's a bunch of stuff now that everything's cloud based, everything's remote, even fat clients, old legacy stuff. A lot of these products, these ZTNA products, secure or software defined perimeter, will allow you to connect to these applications, these legacy things, and use them using your modern IDaaS.
And it's starting to sound a lot like mainframe.
And I don't know. You're not giving me warm fuzzies because
they're trying to roll the whole thing up into the cloud so they can really hold on to it. But yeah, I agree with you.
Access control. It becomes so much easier there. Like if you don't have a Windows file server where everybody's just dumping crap all day, when I
now you have OneDrive
and SharePoint.
That was right, and it's so much easier to do access control there and to do audits there.
Until the same problem we had with Doug with the database. Oh, we can't get it there, so just open it to everyone.
Like we can't. Nobody can access the files. So it's like just turn it on, turn it open. Yeah, we'll fix it later.
I've never seen that before. Yeah,
usability problems still exist.
So we'll put Dave the intern on it.
Yeah. Well, sorry, that's the point I'm trying to make. I've worked for various companies that supposedly have single sign-on solutions. I won't name names, but the trust that I have access to on multiple machines and rarely having to re-log in or re-authenticate, good for 30 days and so on and so forth, it makes me very uncomfortable.
You like typing your password in more often?
Because there's no risk in that.
I like security.
Jeff wants the one where you have to get a
security,
drop of blood.
typing your password more often? Is that better security?
If that's a part of the authentication process, in theory, yes, I would say it is. Rather than the trust that's associated with these solutions.
Unless you use the same password every time.
I haven't changed my password in 37 years.
It's still Lucky 7 Dragon, right?
Just like my underwear.
my 4-digit PIN is good now as it was then.
You're not wrong. Let's say it was good then, right? So
it's a 32 character password. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, I put the story about teaching drones to hunt down human screams just because I was like, what could go wrong with that?
But, so this is a chicken or egg problem. Are they screaming because they're being hunted by drones, or are the drones?
No. So the headline's great. First? It's an awesome headline. If you actually read the story, it's a German company, and it actually is. It's a cool idea. They were like, what if you had big disasters and you could send out a swarm of drones, and the drones were attuned to listen for things like helfen Sie mich, or oh God, it's bleeding, and they could home in on those locations and then alert rescuers and responders to actually go where the drone is. So because the drones could fly over some kind of crazy amount of space really fast, and they could find. So they had all these researchers out in fields.
It turns out they just all show up at the local BDSM club.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God, it's bleeding.
But I figured this is one of those things for the drones.
Or Burning Man.
Yeah, the drones turn on each other, and the next thing
consequences.
Or the drones get bored and they're like, there's not enough screams this week, so we're going to make some of our own and that kind of thing. And
or in a nod to Sam, what is it called? Pork Fest.
Mm-hmm. Pork Fest.
Pork Fest. Look out for the drones, Sam, at Pork Fest.
They're coming.
Just don't scream.
They're coming for you. Don't scream.
So I guess you could tune them to listen for all sorts of things.
Yeah.
It's just, the sound of bong hits.
I have a stupid question. Is airspace above residences owned by the residences?
No, it's not. It's owned by the...
Depends on to what altitude.
Well, yeah, but below 500 feet, you still don't really own it.
Right.
It's like it's uncontrolled airspace from the FCC under 500 feet. I'm sorry, FAA. Yeah, FAA. But the FCC gets their share too. They control stuff in that airspace.
They're 500 to 750 feet.
Yeah, but I don't think you really own it. There's a lot of case law going to come out about that when people start shooting down drones and training their own drones to home in on other drones. And can I capture that Amazon drone if it's flying over my house and got something good loaded on it? And the Uber Eats drone gets grabbed in a net, and you know, hey kids, tonight we eat. Look, pizza, yay.
I don't know when they're planning on releasing it, but Amazon has a whole subsidiary dedicated to just delivery drones. Prime Air, I think it's called.
And then security drones to protect the delivery drones.
Do you think they're going to pay the drones any better than they pay their traditional delivery?
No, and that's why they're going to turn on you and home in on the human screams.
That's kind of the point, Jeff. That's the point of the drones.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's just going to be total mayhem over everybody's
And they promised
house.
me flying cars. I'm kind of glad that I won't have one because...
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Instead of bugs on the windshield,
people can't even handle a merge lane with a sign. Can you imagine if they were all flying around?
Yep.
And you'd have those guys going, I can fly better than any computer ever made. You know,
Luke, you've switched off your targeting computer.
Yeah. Hand me that.
Which begs the question, but it just popped in my head. How did Teslas do, or automated cars do in traffic circles?
Better than humans.
Yeah.
I mean,
anything's better than that, I guess.
We've got a few roundabouts right next to where I live, and it's torture watching people go through them.
Mm-hmm.
Like acting like there's a stop sign at the beginning of the roundabout.
God.
Oh my God!
I almost got clipped in one the other day because it's just people are just doing stupid stuff and they don't understand right away, and they think a yield sign means stop, and it's like
and like the rules for every roundabout or traffic circle that I see seem to be different, and depending on where you are, because I grew up near the Cape, and there's the two traffic circles, the two rotaries off for the bridges, and it's like a yield and a circle, and it's a free for all in the middle of fucking circle.
There you go.
There's no line, no lanes.
No.
But like you go down to South Kingstown area, and there's a traffic circle, and there's marked lanes, and if you're in this one, you get off now.
Right.
But
I mean, they both work if people just understand. I mean, I think the evolution of traffic is to get to the Vietnam model where it's just like don't hit anybody. I mean, because I was driving in Ho Chi Minh City, and it's like I came to an intersection where there was at least 6 different roads feeding into a plaza. And it was just like nobody even slowed down. It was just don't hit anybody and just keep on rolling. And it's the law of the sea. The largest vehicle has the right of way. So when a dump truck is driving through there, you got the right of way over a 50cc moto because it'll just splatter on the side of you like a bug, and you scrape it off with a squeegee later, or don't bother. And it seems to work. It was very efficient. I mean, they had massive traffic using very limited roads, and it was working just fine. I mean, I was quite impressed by the whole thing. But you had to just have that mindset. Don't hit anything and don't slow down.
Yeah, same in the Middle East when I was driving over there. The country I was in, cars were the same, same side of the road. And, all the rules and everything were pretty much the same. But the moment you got to a roundabout, it was Mad Max.
Yeah.
No lines, no lanes.
Awesome.
You'd have like a 4-lane roundabout and just, it was like everybody just dropped the hammer the moment they got into that roundabout, like almost
That's
up
what
on
you gotta
2 wheels.
do.
Like,
welcome to Cape Cod.
You get the mohawk and a little guy on a stick and a flamethrower, and it's time to go. We're going to work.
Like seriously,
you need the guy with the
welcome to
guitar
Cape Cod
on your hood.
Yeah, welcome to Cape Cod.
I loved it.
I can remember many years ago, my late stepfather came to one of those rotaries, and he was like, "God damn it!" And he just drove right up the middle.
There you go.
The middle. Yep. Yep.
Seen that done.
Yep.
More than a few times. Mm-hmm. It's definitely interesting.
There's a story here. When you hear the term eavesdropping, that refers to things you hear, right?
Yeah. Audio. I've seen that term used for like sniffing and things, but typically,
yeah, or visual, or
I can neither confirm nor deny.
So it kind of irked me. Millions of connected cameras open to eavesdropping. I was like,
Yeah.
I
Do
don't
they
think
have
I don't think
microphones
that's a
on the cameras?
misuse. I don't think it's a misuse. I mean, I've heard people say eavesdropping for sniffing. I mean, it's like listening. in on
And I think what sort of what
Sure.
Adrian's getting here is that like maybe we can connect to these cameras and it's not that the cameras are subject to eavesdropping, that the cameras are being used for eavesdropping.
yeah.
Right.
Is that sort of what got you, Adrian?
No. My beef was just does eavesdropping mean audio
But it's
or
video, not audio.
I don't know. Let's just ask the Peloton
Yeah, because
folks.
if you look at the definition, it's in most places eavesdropping is audio.
Listen.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'll say sound waves.
Are sound waves different than?
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I'm not going there. The whole is light, a particle, or a wave. It's just like
Anyway, it looks like yet another like Mirai potential.
yeah.
Made of
again,
made
cameras.
completely of Peloton exercise equipment.
Boy, that'll be some exciting video.
Yeah.
So what do you do with a Peloton bike if you hack into it and take it over?
You watch the video of people like panting. It's a whole thing.
Well, you think about a couple of the scenarios. One, it's a pivot point.
Yep.
It's on your net. It's on the network. Now with many people either a shift to work from home or having worked from home for the last 18 months.
Wouldn't it be easier to hack the light bulb?
I don't know.
Path of least resistance.
Or could I look at what you're doing when you're not on the Peloton
Exactly.
and see you sitting over there punching in your security code on the pad? Or
Camera and microphone enabled. Can we use it as a listening or a video bug?
honey, what's our PIN again? 1111 or 0000? No, that's the bank account.
Yep. Yes.
No, I mean absolutely. I'm not even. I mean, it's. I was kind of making a joke, but I'm not making a joke. I mean, it's the truth.
Yep.
It's
And
like
think about all of those things that if you're now working from home, potentially in the same room where your Peloton exercise equipment is, that has a camera and a microphone that you are talking about. I mean, I think about how many things I said on conference calls, talking with my coworkers about, oh, hey, did you use this password to try to log into that Active Directory domain?
Yep.
Like all of those things that people
And
are
you
talking
did
about.
that with the Peloton in the room?
Well, I didn't because I don't have a Peloton, but you get my point.
I guess
I have one of those millions of cameras that are vulnerable to eavesdropping.
I mean, I've had meetings with people that were actually using exercise equipment while they were in the meeting. They were, and I mean, and I can imagine. I've heard other people working at home, and I've heard people talk. In fact, I was in a meeting. I could hear the person's significant other in the background at a different meeting talking about possibly proprietary information. And if I had heard something really good, like buy Dogecoin, I might have jumped all over that.
Yeah, so apparently a Peloton bike is just an exercise bike with an Android tablet.
It's just got an
glued to
Android
it.
tablet bolted onto it.
So
and
if you know how to hack Android, you can have some fun with a Peloton.
Yep.
that's how I cheated exercise.
And then you think about how many of these other devices in our home like that are Android powered, and so many of them are. Like your LG,
Cars?
your LG TV, your
car,
cars,
your light bulb.
what is it? The one that Paul has, the mirror. Like,
Oh,
is
that's
that,
another
is
exercise system.
Yeah, is
Yeah,
that
it's like
Android based? I don't know,
Wouldn't shock me a bit.
but Android. What does it cost you to deploy Android for the
Not
operating
much.
system?
It's cheap.
Android's free.
Yeah, nothing.
What?
That's what
Android's
I mean,
free.
yeah.
It's open source. Like, it costs you nothing.
Yeah, I mean the source code costs you nothing. Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, and you can look at it too. You can look at source code. Fun.
Yeah.
Another reason not to exercise. I'm good with this story.
I like it.
Hey, just when we've gotten all of our customers to get off of Windows 7 and onto Windows 10, now it's going end of life?
Well,
In just a few
2025.
years?
But we got plenty of time to get on top of that, Jeff. We got 4 years.
Why is it that companies that knowing that an end of life like this is coming, do they wait until like a year after it's passed to start their 2-3 year planning project, deployment project for
Because it
upgrade?
costs money.
Just asking.
I actually put on. I remember insisting on doing this back in like 2010. The fact that XP was going to be end of life. I think it was. I want to say it was 2012. I don't remember exactly when it was, But I would interview them as part of the pen test, and ask them, I see you've got 800 Windows XP systems here, and it's about a year. Like, they're not going to be getting patches anymore. Do you have a plan to get off them? And that would go on the pen test report. The fact that they had no plan to move off their old stuff that was about to, get end of life.
People still running Windows XP.
Yep.
This is Larry's story number 1, by the way. The promise or the prospect that Windows 11 is coming.
Yep.
And may be announced this year.
Yep. And one of the things that I found interesting and sort of grabbed me about this specifically is that the current, leaked, released version that is out there. I know a bunch of my friends that are in the forensics and incident response business have downloaded a copy and run all of their tools on it to see if all the stuff that has fun with all the Windows internal still works. And sure enough, they do.
Yep.
No changes needed.
Well, it's not like they started from scratch, Larry.
Right. At this point, it's probably not all that different from Windows 10.
Yeah. Agreed.
What I find interesting, Microsoft is gotten smarter, perhaps, or maybe it's market demand. But in the early days of end of life being an issue, and it was an issue in the PCI world because there's a requirement in PCI that you have to patch all your systems, and somebody figured out a long time ago, well, if a system's not being updated, there's no patches coming out, so you can't use unsupported operating systems. And there's ways around that sometimes, but that's the general rule. And I remember having a customer 10-ish years ago that was struggling to get off XP, so they were paying through the nose for extended license support from Windows. It was like $500,000 a year, and all that was phone support. Whereas now I have a customer that is still on Windows 7, and they're paying for the extended support, but they're actually getting patch releases still for Windows 7, even though it's out of support now. So kudos to Microsoft for actually doing something.
Probably a money-making strategy.
Well, I'm sure they got feedback for
the extended
the $500,000 a year. I think was just trying to encourage people to get off the old operating system. Don't spend the money, because the second year it doubled to $1 million.
There you go.
And they were paying it, and I'm like, is it philosophical question for you guys? It's, you don't have a choice but only go to the next version of Windows. But I have customers that are on older versions of Windows Server, and they only upgrade to the next version rather than hopping over to whatever the latest. I don't even know what are we up to in servers now.
2019.
2019. They're trying to get off of, and I don't know off the top of my
2008,
2003 server,
2008, and they're only going to 10 or 12 or 16 or 18. Why not just go to the front of the line and get the most bang?
That's a big change there. If you're upgrading from one of those old ones and you switch over to 2019, there's a lot of stuff, especially if you got proprietary tools. You just can't jump up there, and well, you could, but it's going to take a lot of testing and prep to go from, like, say, 2003 server to 2019. So a lot of times I think people try to do that a little more gradually. Plus, there's
the old paradigm back in the ancient times, 25 years ago, when it was mostly Unix, you always just went to the next. Well, they always said don't go to the latest release because wait for the bugs to work out. But they'd always want you to. They always wanted you to go incrementally. In fact, I don't know if Windows still does it, but you couldn't, if you were just trying to update your operating systems, you couldn't jump forward. You had to.
Well, and backwards compatibility is a big deal, and not everybody IBM always guaranteed that on AS400 that if you jump to the front of the line, your old stuff would still work because you could always just use it the way you were using it before. But Windows has never promised that, and they make significant changes sometimes, and it's pretty scary. I mean, having done it, it's pretty scary to jump even just one version, with stuff that you've got that works and everything's up and running, and somebody comes in and goes, why don't we just upgrade everything? And you go, wow, there went my summer. and and then it may not work, and then you're sitting there 3 weeks in going, this is a big problem. So it's a big ordeal, and it's an ordeal that's not really mandated. So I think a lot of times people say, we'll do that next cycle. And then next cycle comes along and somebody says, well, hey, Sun Valley's going to come out, but if we just wait a year, Maverick 2, the Sun Master will be out, and it'll be Windows 12, and on and on and on. And there's always that sort of, out on the horizon we can update. And why update to 2019 when you could wait for 2022 or whatever? And I mean, it's a game, and it's an expensive game, however you play it.
I mean, a lot of it comes down to compatibility. It's a crappy place to be when you upgrade, and you find out after you upgrade, that something you've got doesn't support that latest version. I remember we used Iron Mail back in the day, and we used RSA's Envision Sim.
Iron Mail.
Nobody asked us. They upgraded the Iron Mail from 5.5 to 6.0, and there was no parser for 6.0, and the logs were completely different. And overnight, all of a sudden, we now have no Iron Mail logs anymore, and nobody's got time to write a parser, custom parser for the new log format. So, and
that's a toughie. And we've all been overnight. There. We've all been there with something where they're saying this is end of life, and you're going, "Wow, I was going to go on vacation, but not now."
Yep.
Or maybe I will, and then you don't do it, and then next thing you know, it's 7 months out. They're going to announce a new one, so maybe we'll wait for the next one. And,
all right. Let's see.
So what do you think?
Is that
what I'm saying is we either end this, or is there one more juicy story?
I say we call it.
I think it's time to call it.
Yeah, we're right at your
magic bewitching hour.
Bedtime, Jeff.
We are. Yes.
Very nice.
I
need to go drink some
that better if we did it
warm milk and put on my Depends and climb into bed.
Wow. Son of
Maybe if I didn't drink warm milk before bed, I wouldn't need Depends.
I need a bucket if I drank warm milk anyway. Oh my god!
My god, I haven't drank.
For the record,
milk in
I have
years.
never had warm milk. It sounds.
I always had a thing about milk, even when I was a kid. It was like stuff that's being squeezed out of glands. Just doesn't sound like something you want to drink.
I suppose it depends on your age.
So you're a leg man.
Wow. Adrian.
Okay.
Take us out, somebody.
Yeah, Larry, if you would take us out, please.
This is going to get ugly
we've
otherwise.
Got another, I should mention, we do have a pre-record coming up, the web cache poisoning with Timur Guvenkaya from Security.
And so
it's super interesting.
So next segment. See you later.